Hey friends, welcome to the Amplify Oz channel here on YouTube. My name's Tristan and today I'm going to be showing you the top 5 things you should be doing when you first get Microsoft Flight Simulator for the Xbox or for the PC. The first thing we're going to do is set up our control scheme in Microsoft Flight Simulator. You can see here the main way that I interact with the sim is by using the TCA side stick from Thrustmaster. I think it's a great introductory way for those of you using PC to control your aircraft in the sim. I'm also using a keyboard and mouse on the PC, obviously, and the good news for you guys over on Xbox is that you can also plug in a keyboard and mouse. Any USB keyboard and mouse will do, just plug it into the USB port on the Xbox and it should work straight away. And while we're looking at the settings here in the options menus, something that I would recommend you take a look at next is the assistance options. There's a number of different options here on this page that make things easier or harder for you when you're flying your airplane. You can make failures happen, you can make piloting easier or harder, you can turn on points of interest. Once we've set up our control scheme and our assistance settings, let's jump back to the home page and take a look at what we've got. I know there's lots of tempting things to do for you here on the home page, but what I'd really recommend you doing first is jumping into the flight training options. Jump through the flight training options and choose the first one. Basically, go to basic handling and then take a look at all the different things you can do in a very small Cessna 152 to learn how to fly for the very first time. Where are we going to start here? I would recommend starting at the start. So click on Aircraft Essentials and click Fly. Now, all of these things that you're going to learn here with this little Cessna are completely transferable to all of the other small planes within Microsoft Flight Simulator. So you're going to receive some objectives and be spoken to by the sim to explain exactly what those objectives are and how to interact with the simulator. As you can see here, I'm working my way through this first tutorial. You just follow the instructions that are spoken to you and also shown in the objectives window. And by doing that, you can learn the basics of how you interact with an aircraft and in later tutorials, how you fly an aircraft successfully, including taking off, landing, flying in a circuit, and also navigating from point A to point B using VFR flight rules. So now you've learned how to fly a plane. The next thing I'd recommend you do is to click on the Discovery Flights option. And we're going to take a discovery flight. This is a great way for you to see some of the most beautiful parts of the world that are modeled so accurately in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and also give you an opportunity to fly some of the different aircraft that are included. We're going to give one of those a go right now. Let's click on Tokyo, which is the first one shown, and then we'll click Fly. It takes a little while to load up. And once we're in the simulator, you can see we're in a different aircraft from that Cessna that we had during flight training. But all the same principles apply, and this is a great way of easing your way into flying small aircraft within the game. You can see the aircraft starts off flying itself. I'd recommend jumping into the cockpit, just like we were within that flight training, and just taking your hands onto the controls and giving it a little play around just to see how this aircraft feels. We get this great atmospheric music in the background, and this scenario is all set up for you with really beautiful weather and a sunset. So just play around with the controls. Try turning left and right, increasing your throttle, decreasing your throttle. Check you can use the flaps. This cockpit's obviously a little bit more complex than what we had in the Cessna, including with a glass cockpit, which means having screens rather than gauges. Here I am flying around Tokyo and enjoying the views. And this is something that you can do for yourself so easily within Microsoft Flight Simulator. One of the other great features that's included within Microsoft Flight Simulator is the AI flight assistant. So this is basically a clever autopilot or second pilot that takes over from you when you feel like sitting back, relaxing, and just enjoying the views, or you're starting to struggle with flying the aircraft. So choose where you want to go, and then turn on AI piloting, turn on some of the other AI protections like auto trim and anti-seal protection, and then close the window and sit back and relax as the aircraft is automatically flown to the destination that you've selected. So we've now set up our controls, we've learned how to fly a little plane, and we've done some discovery flights to see some of the best things that Microsoft Flight Simulator has to offer. The next thing you can do is click on the activities menu. And here you can see some of the things we've already done, discovery flights and flight training. But there's also some other things here that we haven't tried yet. And so the next thing I'd recommend you do is have a bit of fun in Microsoft Flight Simulator by giving it a go at some of these landing challenges. Now what these are is basically scenarios where you are set up with an aircraft lined up pretty much for one of the most famous runways in the world. They're spread all around the world, as you might expect. Some of them are more challenging than others, and in all different aircraft as well. This is a great way of just practicing how to land, and also having a bit of fun against your friends, because there is a leaderboard section within the landing challenges. So here we go, we've selected Quito landing challenge, and we click fly to start the scenario. And we're quickly loaded in here into our aircraft, and we can see that there is a runway dead ahead of us. It's really important also to watch the loading screen, because that does give you some clues. And a few seconds later, here we go, attempting to butter this landing. We did an okay job. Not the best and not the worst, but with a bit of practice, you'll be buttering those landings before you know it. So we've done our landing challenges. The next thing that we can look at on the activities menu is the bush trips. Now this is where the activities start to get a bit longer and a bit more involved in the sim. You can see here I've already completed a few of these. I've given a few a shot, and there's some that I haven't even started. The percent completion, it gives a good identification as to which ones you want to do next. Probably worth. So when you click on one of them, this one being the Discover Iceland bush trip, you can see we get a nice description down the left hand side, the from and the to, and a number of legs shown on the right hand side, and the ETE giving you the number of minutes that each leg should approximately take you. So make sure you put the time aside to complete the whole leg, this one being around 47 minutes, and we click fly and we let the scenario load into the simulator. And as you can see, for these bush trips, we start on the ground, although the aircraft is up and running, and we are shown a map. The map basically shows us the flight plan that we're going to be flying today. We'll follow those points of interest from the first airport to the second. And once we land at the second airport, this leg is completed. So when we've had a look around the cockpit and we are ready to get going, just like we learned about in flight training, we're going to release the parking brake and apply some throttle. Make sure our flaps are set just right. Make sure our prop and mix are at max. And we're going to allow the plane to accelerate until we get to our rotation speed, which in the Caravan is around 70 knots. And when we get there, we'll just pull back on the yoke and ease the aircraft into the air. Now on the right hand side here, we can see the nav log. That tells us basically everything we need to know about how we're going to fly this leg of this bush trip. So you can see here the first point of interest is on a heading of 054 degrees, and it's 16.73 kilometers away, which will take us around 2 minutes and 46 seconds. So we'll point ourselves in that direction. And when we're pointing at 054 degrees, we'll start the stopwatch and we'll fly that way for that amount of time. And we keep doing that for each point of interest until we get to our final airport. This is a great way of seeing some of the best places in Microsoft Flight Simulator. In this case, we get this awesome tour of the coastline of Iceland. So we've set up our controls, we've learned to fly, we've done a discovery flight, we've done some landing challenges, we've done a bush trip. The last thing for us to try is to explore the entire world in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we click on the world map, and as you can see, we can navigate to literally anywhere in the world just by scrolling around the map. We can also click on select departure airport and type anywhere that we want to go. In this case, we're going to go to quite a famous airport. We're going to go to Lukla, which is one of the Himalayan base camps. Bit of a challenging airport for our first solo flight, but let's give it a shot. And if we click on aircraft selection, we can see all of the airplanes that are available to you in the sim. This list will change depending on whether you've got the standard, the premium, or the premium deluxe version of the simulator. But we're going to choose the Cessna Grand Caravan. We should have now got quite familiar with it through the landing challenges and through the bush trips. So it's a great one to get started with. We click on Lukla and we zoom to details, and we can choose exactly where we want to start. Now, if we start on the runway here, runway 24 at Lukla, then the aircraft will be plonked on the end of the runway with the engine running and ready to go, just like we had on all of those bush trips. However, if we choose one of the different starting points at this airport, like ramp 6 here, and set that one as departure, then the aircraft will be started in what we call cold and dark, which means no power, no engine running, and we have to start it up ourselves, which is an extra challenge. If we click on the flight conditions in the top right, we can choose how we want to fly, whether we want to fly in multiplayer mode with all players enabled, where we can see everyone else playing on this server. We can choose whether we want to see any other modeled air traffic, like live traffic or artificial intelligent traffic. And we can choose the weather and the time when we want to be flying. We can click live, which literally downloads live weather and the live time from the real world, and we'll fly in the same conditions that are there right now. Now, what I'd recommend doing is selecting an arrival. We're going to just put a nearby airport, the famous airport of Paro, and we're going to fly to Paro today. Now, there's lots of things you can do on this screen, which include much more detailed flight planning, including instrument flight rules, flight planning, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to jump into the simulator and leave flight planning for a later video. So click fly and load in. And you can see we've really set ourselves up for a big challenge for our first solo flight. We're at Lukla, which is one of the most dangerous airports in the world. It's snowing, it's cold and cloudy, and our aircraft is cold and dark. So all the screens are black. And the aircraft has no power, so we're going to have to start literally from scratch. But guess what? There's actually a bit of a helping hand within Microsoft Flight Simulator called the checklist option. So we're going to click on the checklist, let's move it over to the top left of the screen, and we're going to work our way through the checklist to get this aircraft up and running.
A few moments later.
We'll jump into the cockpit and we'll set our flaps, and we'll get ready to depart into the very grey clouds around Lukla Airport. Now, as you can see, Lukla is a very unusual airport because it has a massive slope on the runway, hence why it's known for being one of the most dangerous in the world, but also one of the most fun just to fly here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So go full power and let that slope take us up into the air. And from here on out, the world is your oyster. So there we go. The first 5 things that I think you should do when you first get Microsoft Flight Simulator for Xbox or for PC. And if you did enjoy the video, please remember to click the subscribe button, click like, and hopefully I'll see you next time.